we're back for another murder episode tonight. We're glad that you came by to enjoy this tale with us. Got Scott tonight is going to be talking about a guy by the name of Samuel Little. He had a murder spree over 11 states from the years of 1954 to 2012. Before we get into that, first thing we want to do is thank you for tuning in to Strange Embers. I'm Brent.
I'm Scott.
And let's kick this tale off.
All right. Well, Brent, over the last couple of weeks, I've actually really enjoyed looking into this guy, and there's still a ton more that I'm going to talk about after tonight's episode. There is going to be a second episode. I'm going to bring in a little bit of the nitty-gritty details of how this gentleman was caught. Tonight's more so of the timeline from birth up until his death, and kind of go over some of the crimes that he did commit and the years they took place. So to start this off, I have found some quotes that were mentioned in Confessions of a Serial Killer, which is actually a documentary of Samuel Little. And some of these quotes are just like, they're freaking crazy. All right. So
yeah,
on his first killing from him, this is a quote: "I put my hand around her neck and that was it. She evidently wanted this to happen, you know?"
Really?
Yeah. I'm telling you, this is crazy. This dude's wild. I got away with numerous murders of women in my life over the span of 50 years.
That's crazy. 50 years.
Yeah. Now, this plays into the times where during this whole investigation, he tried to act like he didn't know or remember anything about any of the crimes he committed. He's trying to play the insane card. So this is one of the quotes from that. "I try to trace back to when I became attracted to a woman's throat." Like he couldn't remember. But you'll learn very soon he knows exactly when.
Most of them always do.
"I don't think there was another person that did what I like to do. I think I'm the only one in the world. That's not an honor, but that's a curse. She was fighting for her life, and I was fighting for my pleasure."
Fighting for my pleasure?
Yes. So a detective was asking Samuel during their investigation, how many people did you kill? And he said, "I lost track. I had to count by states."
Had to count by, so he kept up with how many in each state?
Correct.
Okay.
And this right here is James Holland was one of the detectives. So it's James Holland and Samuel Little. Starts with James Holland. "Where did you kill the most?" "Oh, that's easy. Florida and California." "What city did you kill the most in?" "Miami and Los Angeles." "And how many did you kill in Los Angeles?"
Yeah, you answered. I was fixing to ask if it was Florida and California, did he stay like on coastal cities? But you answered it as soon as I was about to ask.
Los Angeles, from what Samuel Little, he replied, Los Angeles, approximately 20.
So whenever he killed in these states, did he, say like the 20 in Los Angeles, did he stay like in an area, and when he left that area he went somewhere else, or was this like he bounced around back and forth?
He liked to bounce around from state to state, and we'll get into that. We'll get into that, why he did that. It'll make sense in a minute. And the last quote I have here: "She was pretty, light colored, honey brown skin. She was tall for a woman, beautiful shape, and friendly. Real friendly. She was even laughing while I was killing her."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
She was laughing while he was killing her.
Yep. That's what he claimed. So now we're going to get into the whole everything.
We was talking about this guy went on This guy went on a 50-year, you said?
Yeah.
That reminded me of Dennis Rader, BTK. His lasted years upon years as well.
Samuel Little is recognized by the FBI as being America's most prolific serial killer. Before dying in jail on December 30th, 2020, Little confessed to 93 counts of murder where he targeted women who were minorities and vulnerable. Oftentimes, these were prostitutes, addicts, and even homeless people. He would then scout. So what he would do, this is how he would I'm throwing hand motions here and you can't even see them. So he would scout areas. He would look for abandoned buildings, low traffic areas, high drug areas, and that's the areas he would target. Little's crimes were brutal and disgusting. His MO was to strangle his victims and often touch himself in sexual ways to the feeling of women struggling to breathe. Now, when he would touch himself, he would alleviate himself as well sometimes, and that gave him the nickname the Choke and Stroke Killer.
Oh, wow. So I don't think I've ever heard of that. I don't know why I've never heard of him, but I haven't.
He's I don't know, because I've never heard of him either until when I stumbled across him. I was like, oh my goodness. Before strangling the victims, he would often knock them out with a single punch to either the back of the head or to the temple. Or he would beat them until they couldn't move, pretty much beat them unconscious. And he even drowned a victim. He only drowned one person. Said that it was too much for him. He would never do it again.
So he was into because to strangle somebody, especially with your hands, that's very intimate. You're close. You're
right.
You're there. Oh, but drowning was too much for him.
And you want. So listen to this. If you talk about being intimate, another quote that he had is, when they die, they're all your favorites. They all belong to you. So that right there, that tells you what kind of person we're dealing with. Little was known to taunt his victims before killing them, either calling them names or saying, hey, this, that, and the other. After he murdered his victims, he would sometimes mutilate their bodies, beat them to a pulp to where they were unrecognizable, pretty much. A quote from Sam was, "For many years, I never thought I would be caught because I didn't think anyone cared for the women I pursued."
So I'm going to go ahead and, I guess, jump out there a little bit early. And did he get caught, or did he make himself get caught at a point? To answer it without answering it, don't got to have details, but did he, how some of them, they get to a point to where they want to be.
He did not want to get caught. He did not want to get caught at all. But he got sloppy for a couple murders, and that's when ultimately later down the line things started snowballing. Samuel Little was born as Samuel McDowell June 7th, 1940 in Reynolds, Georgia. Little's mother was Bessie Mae Little, who was a teenage prostitute, approximately 18 or 19 years old at the time of his birth. When she birthed Samuel, she was actually in jail, and after she was released from jail, she abandoned Samuel on the side of the road.
No kidding.
Just left him on the side of the road. Then? He was a baby.
No kidding.
So Little's father was Paul McDowell. After Samuel's abandonment, obviously cops and firefighters found out who he was somehow. Didn't go into specifications on that. And he actually went and lived with his paternal grandmother. After he moved in with his paternal grandmother, they moved to Lorain, Ohio. In Lorain, Ohio, Sam grew up, obviously, throughout his whole childhood there, and he struggled with being intelligent and having a mental aptitude of the curriculum they had in school. So that led to him finally dropping out of school, where he attended Hawthorne Junior High. It was also noted that Little had a lot of disciplinary problems. After he dropped out of school, he started collecting true crime magazines that depicted women who were being choked or grabbed by the throat. This weird fetish of his began when he was in kindergarten, when he saw his teacher grab and touch her neck. Just a simple touch of her neck, that's what turned Samuel into the monster he was.
While he was in school.
Correct.
Okay.
In kindergarten. Samuel had sexual fantasies of choking women and nothing more since that day he saw his teacher touch her throat. Now, it's also important to know before going forward that his childhood was riddled with a lot of violence and abuse, from the abandonment from his mother, having mental and physical abuse from his grandmother. This, in my opinion, I think this is what led Little into this downhill spiral. He had nothing that could help him. It also led him into alcohol and drug abuse at a very young age. It didn't specify what age he was, but it said at a young age. And this is kind of where it led him into pursuing a life of petty crimes so that he could support his alcohol and drug addiction. While doing these petty crimes, he did wind up drifting town to town so that he wouldn't be caught.
So what kind of, besides doing the crimes, what kind of work did he do jumping town to town?
We will get into that.
Because I take it that plays into some of his hunting?
No, actually.
No?
So he only had 2 jobs from what I could find. And it was while he lived in Florida. But we're actually coming up on that. So in 1954, Little was committed to a boys' industrial school. It's like a pretty much like a reform school for teenagers. And this was near Columbus, Ohio. He would later say that he was sent there for stealing a bicycle. By the time he left, a year and a half later, he had been reported 47 times for disciplinary infractions from the boys' industrial school. So the start of Little's crimes was in 1956, his true crimes minus the stolen bike, where he was charged with breaking and entering a property in Omaha, Nebraska. Once he was caught, he served his first time in juvenile detention. After he was arrested and released, they moved him to Florida to live with his mother, get him away from all the crime and stuff he was doing up there, move him down south to Florida.
With his mother,
yes,
you said?
The one that abandoned him.
Okay.
Now, this was in 1960-ish. Mid to late 60s. Sam served multiple years as a cemetery worker and an ambulance attendant in Florida. Those were the 2 jobs he had. After working for these jobs, Little got bored and wanted to start traveling. Here comes the town or state to state thing. So I don't know how he saved up enough money doing those 2 jobs to do this. I don't know. But when he started moving state to state, he started having a lot of run-ins with the law and chasing his addiction. Sam was arrested over 25 times across 11 different states. Just let it soak in.
And out of the 25 times, I mean, we didn't once be able to connect him to any kind of murders in that period of time?
Nope. 25 times across 11 different states, totaling up to 10 years in prison. Now, a lot of his stuff he actually didn't get. He got arrested, came up not guilty verdict on a lot of the stuff. During his time in prison,
just not enough evidence.
Correct. So during his time in prison, Sam, to stay active and stay out of trouble, he took an interest into boxing. He never pursued that dream of boxing. He obviously went to more sinister fantasy of murder and strangulation and asphyxiation. Little, however, did call himself a prize fighter boxer because he, while in prison, they boxed a lot and he was pretty much undefeated in prison, but he never pursued his career outside of prison.
He's still self-acclaimed a prize fighter.
He was self-proclaimed, yes.
So we prison fight and we can proclaim how good of a boxer we are.
Pretty much, I guess.
All right.
But I mentioned 25 times he was arrested. I know you're probably thinking, like, what all could he have possibly been arrested for 25 times and not done more than 10 years of jail or prison time? The things he got arrested for included DUI, fraud, shoplifting, solicitation, armed robbery, theft, assault, battery and assault with a deadly weapon, sexual assault, and rape.
And only 10 years.
Over the 25 crimes he did, he only served 10 years.
Somebody drastically dropped the ball on this.
Yes.
How do you go from armed robbery, assault and battery, sexual assault, rape? How do you 10 years? That's it. And I'm guessing that 10 years wasn't just a straight up, hey, you're getting 10 years from this. That's probably like
no, it was like a year here
and a year or two
exactly.
there.
Exactly.
Wow, really?
Yes. I'm telling you, dude, this case blows my mind. Because if the assault and battery with the rape, if they would have held him for the appropriate time, I'm sure he still probably would have done some messed up things, but a lot of this would not have happened.
No, of course it wouldn't. He'd have been sitting in jail for, well, I mean, if he would have been in jail for some of the, some of the other charges wouldn't have happened because he'd have been in jail in the period of time where he did those crimes as well.
Correct.
But if we just start with just one of them and he's gone for X amount, not a year, not 2 years, but X amount of time, then.
Correct. Now, he also, when he was arrested, he did bond out a lot. And when he was bonded out is when he would perform some of these murders. So waiting his trial, he would go out and he would do more screwed up crap and then go to trial, get arrested, go to prison, do his time, come out, rinse and repeat. It's crazy.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it is. So we're going to start in 1961.
Oh, hold on. Before you carry on. So I know we're talking about, like, as far as killing people, we went across 11 states doing this, but these crimes where he went to prison, is this one state? Is this multiple states that he did this in as well? Multiple states. So, and we're talking, this was not at this period of time. He started killing in the 50s?
His first victim was 1970.
Okay, so that makes a little more sense. So now we've left the state. We've had a charge of assault and battery, right? We leave that state. We go to a new state. Where if this is in that period of time, I mean, the internet was in infancy, but it's not like now. It's not like somebody's going to get arrested. They're going to run it through NCIC and
correct.
Just see this whole entire list of record. He goes to another state. They don't know what he did in this other state.
Correct.
So, I mean, that makes more sense now. But
and
even given...
Another thing that helped him was DNA analysis was just becoming a real thing. using bodily functions, bodily fluids instead of hair
Right.
follicles and fingerprints, they didn't really have a way to find DNA in those years. So that's what, in my opinion, obviously, I think that's kind of what kept him going more and more.
Well, and there was still so many of those cases, just like you said, before DNA analysis became big, they only had a small amount of something, of whatever it may be, skin, bodily fluids, whatever. So even as DNA became something that they could test, they would not test that, even though they're like, hey, we're pretty sure this guy probably had something to do with this. They wouldn't test that DNA yet because they won't. It was like at that point in time,
inevitable.
Yes, it was just like if you're going to arrest somebody, you're going to have your case put together before you put handcuffs on them.
Correct.
Because if they fall through the cracks, that's done. So same thing. They only had this minute amount of whatever it is to test. So they were like, we're not going to we're not going to roll those dice yet because we don't have enough evidence saying that he leads to this before we're going to test it against it.
Yep. So we're going to get into the timeline, and this is going to make you ask more questions. I guarantee it. So in 61, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison for breaking and entering a furniture store in Lorain, Ohio, and he was charged as an adult. So he did 3 years in prison there just for breaking and entering.
Okay.
66, he was arrested in Cleveland, Ohio for assault and battery after beating a woman. No jail time. January 31st, 1970, Little picked up his first victim, who was Mary Brosley, or Brosley, Brosley.
Murder the names.
Yes. Mary Brosley, 33, he picked her up at a bar in North Miami Beach, Florida, where he then drove her to a secluded area near the Everglades, strangled her to death before burying her in a shallow grave.
Have you ever been down to Miami in the Everglades?
I have not.
Plenty of places that you can go down there and never be seen by anybody.
Really?
Yeah, just nothing. Driving across the Everglades, headed back to Miami, we saw the lights of the city. It was still like over an hour and a half before we actually made it there. It's just flat, you see forever, and it's just, that's how dark it is out there. You could see the lights from the city from that far.
Wow, that's crazy.
You said one of the ones he had assault on a woman. He didn't get any time for that one. I mean, that one is it was a woman he assaulted, but still, that still falls up under a
domestic.
It's an assault charge. I mean, there's people that get out of those every day.
Right. So to continue on May 28th, 1971, he was arrested in Cleveland with his girlfriend at the time, Lucy Madero, and they were charged with robbery of a gas station. While in jail, Madero confided in her cellmate, Dorsey, that she was going to testify against Little in that robbery case so that she could get less time. But while awaiting trial, Little was also charged with sodomy. A year later in 1972, when the robbery case and the sodomy charge went to trial, Madero testified against Little, but his defense team was able to plan for it with the help from Dorsey. So Dorsey was gathering all the information from Madero and relaying it to Little's attorney. So they had a case against a case. Little was eventually found not guilty and not even tried for the sodomy charges. Dorsey and Little wound up getting together, and they stayed together until she died of natural causes, which was brain hemorrhage, I think, in Los Angeles in 1988. She was approximately 27 years older than Little. Throughout the 1970s, Little and Dorsey moved around the Midwest and South, supporting themselves by shoplifting, burglary, and fencing stolen goods. Little would confess to committing multiple murders across both regions during that decade, according to the FBI, where most of the victims still remain unknown.
And that was with her?
Yes. She was well aware that he was committing murder.
And so she was, well, how old did you say she was? 27 years older?
Correct.
So, but there's nothing to say that she was doing murder with him.
No, she just knew about it.
Yeah, do you think that she really just knew about it and that's it?
I'm sure she probably helped hide the bodies. She was an accomplice of some sort, for sure. 100% an accomplice. And who's to say that Little pretty much told her, hey, look, if you don't help me, I'm going to kill you.
There's a lot of them that did stuff like that.
Right.
But with that being said, it might have started that way with a bunch of them, but as it goes on, they're just as much into, even if they say that. I mean, if you had somebody say that to you, there's no way you're going to do that unless you're somewhat into it.
That's true.
You're not just going to go along with the ride for years of doing that or...
No, you're not. So to jump forward, we're going to fast forward 6 years to 1976 in September. Little was arrested for intent to rape a woman outside of St. Louis, Missouri. The victim told the police that Little choked her from behind with an electrical cord, forced her into his car, beat her unconscious, and then drove to a remote location and raped her. Little was only sentenced to 3 months in jail.
3 months?
Months.
I mean, like, did they even read the charges?
She was a prostitute.
Oh, okay.
She was a prostitute. So he did.
I see.
You see where that's going.
So the courts were like, we really don't care.
Right. November 1982, Little was arrested again for shoplifting in Pascagoula, Mississippi. After authorities discovered he matched the description of a suspect in the death of Melinda Rose LaPree, he was then charged with her murder. A grand jury, however, declined to indict him. He is subsequently extradited to face charges for the rape and murder of Patricia Ann Mount in Gainesville, Florida. Which we're going to get into all these individual people and all these individual cases that I'm talking about now in the next episode. This is just a timeline of the years and what all transpired. And reason I'm doing that is I don't want it to be a 2.5 hour long podcast. I'd rather split it up into an hour, maybe an hour and 15 each.
I'm good with that.
January 1984, Little is tried for murder of Patricia Ann Mount, where he was seen leaving a bar in 1982 with her. Her bruised, naked body was later found in a field. After deliberating for less than half an hour, jurors acquitted him on all charges.
Why?
See, I'm glad you're asking why, because now you are really intrigued and you're really going to want to listen to the next episode.
Please tell me there's like interviews with these jurors or something. 30 minutes and we're just going to acquit him?
I don't know. I know that there was some of these cases where the jurors they had like 3 different juror pools, and they all came to they couldn't come to a conclusion. So the trial just pretty much was dismissed.
There's been a bunch of them that I've heard, that they've went through that. They go back and especially in capital murder cases with a death sentence on the line, there's a lot of them that are just like, I can't
put that person's life.
I can't say 1,000% for sure he did this or she did this, so I can't. I mean, that's happened a lot.
So that was in 1984, January. In October of 1984, he was arrested again for 2 assault charges in San Diego and later tried for attempted murder. After the jury deadlocks twice,
I'm beginning to see a pattern
guilty.
here.
Right. He pleads guilty to assault and false imprisonment and serves 2.5 years in prison.
So that's the second time he's been to prison.
Correct. 3 years later, once he's released, he moves to Los Angeles. And in July of that year, he murders Carol Alford. Once he murdered her, he wound up dumping her body in a South Central alleyway. Out in the open in an alleyway. 2 years later, in 1989, he murdered Audrey Nelson, then August and Guadalupe Apodaca a month later. So these were the 3 where he got sloppy.
Where was that? What state was that in?
Don't know that yet.
I think that's Texas.
I think it was in Texas.
Did he do anything in Texas?
Yes.
Because I'm pretty sure here we go, murder the word, the Guadalupe River. I think that's in Texas.
Let's see. Yes, Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
So we had California, Arizona, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Washington, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. In 1991, Little steals a carton of cigarettes after going back to Lorain, Ohio.
Please tell me he goes to jail for a carton of cigarettes.
He wound up hitting someone while trying to flee the scene of the crime, and he was arrested and charged with aggravated robbery.
We can't go to jail for real crimes, but we steal a pack of cigarettes and we're going down.
It's the tobacco taxes, man.
That's right.
I don't know exactly how long he served for that, but I know he did serve some time for it. Yeah. Yeah. I only think it was a couple months, but he did wind up serving some time.
As I throw my hands up in the air.
Yes. 1998, he pleads guilty to attempted robbery for his arrest in 1991. Okay. Not a couple months. He wound up getting sentenced to 2 years in prison for stealing a carton of cigarettes and hitting somebody.
But 2 years in prison.
Yeah, but hey, look, if you murder somebody or if you strangle somebody and you just rape them, we'll just let you go. That's a slap on the wrist there, man. You just keep doing your life, you just do whatever makes you happy. Go steal another carton of cigarettes.
That was just better off. Yeah, that was murder and rape. That's just a happy little accident.
Right. Yeah. No, it's definitely, and it wasn't his first time either. That's what's crazy. But we're also talking,
like I said, this is in those days also that you jump states.
Yeah. 2005, Little claims his final victim, who was a woman named Nancy, who he strangled in Tupelo, Mississippi. Investigators believe her identity could be Nancy Carol Stevens, whose body was found off of a road that August. In 2007, Little was arrested in Los Angeles for possession of cocaine and pleads guilty. After failing to attend a court-ordered drug rehab program, a bench warrant was issued for his arrest. September 5th, 2012, Little was arrested at a homeless shelter in Louisville, Kentucky, and extradited to California to face the narcotics charges. January 2013, LAPD detectives find a DNA match between Little and Alfred Nelson and Apodaca murders. The LA County DA office charged Sam Little with 3 counts of murder and special circumstances for multiple murder. So those 3 cases are probably going to be, if I can find enough, I haven't been able to find enough on them yet, but if I can find enough, I'd like to do those 3 in particular on the next episode.
Yeah.
As to what kind, I know he left evidence in the panties of one of them, hence the name Choke and Stroke.
Right.
So I know that was some of it, but hell, I mean, we're talking 2013. From 89 to 2013, that was a cold case. And they still had enough DNA there to prove it was him. Find a match on him.
But like I said, at those points in time, unless they knew pretty much before they do the test that it's just a formality at this point,
right,
then they're not doing the test.
But, I think it was starting in the early 2000s. They started running DNA on everything.
I don't think it was that soon yet.
Was it? Was it mid 2000s?
I don't remember. I don't think it was as early as like just right into the 2000s. I don't think so. But I know like a lot of DNA now, honestly, I'll have to look it up. But I think unless it's a serious crime, anybody that has a serious crime, or it might be anybody with a felony now, they have a DNA profile on you now.
Yeah, I do know that. I think that started
I don't
in 18, I think, or 15.
That probably sounds about right. I was about to say it's probably been within the past 10 years, probably. Yeah. So I mean, that's still fairly new. But there's still a whole entire thing going along with that as well, where a lot of them are saying, I don't know exactly how to say this. A lot of the criminals are trying to claim human rights laws that it's not right to have a DNA profile on them or something. I can't remember.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're a felon.
Correct. Serious crime felon.
You chose the route you chose.
Yeah. If you're a serious crime felon, a violent crime,
yes.
Then yeah. Yes.
100%. September 2014, following a brief trial, the jury actually finally found Little guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. That's going to be the Alfred Nelson and Apodaca case. He's later sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. And while he was at this sentencing, Little jumped up and screamed out, "I did not do it." This is where he starts claiming his innocence. He claimed his innocence all the way up until 2018. I didn't do it. I'm not guilty. I didn't do it. I did all these petty crimes, but I would never commit murder. 2018, after gaining Little's trust, the Texas Ranger, James Holland, which is the one I quoted before, began interviewing him with the help of FBI analyst Christy Palazzolo. God, I'm sorry if I butchered that. And Angela Williamson. Up until that point, the 78-year-old had maintained his innocence, like I stated before, but he soon began detailing his crimes. He kept saying, I can't remember anything. I can't remember anything. Little shared what names he could remember, and this is where it gets interesting. I got pictures. I've got pictures. They gave him an oil pastel and sketch pad, and he was able to sketch the exact image of each individual that he murdered.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes. In fact, here, look. Let me...
Of everybody that he murdered, that he said he didn't murder anybody?
Correct. This is just a couple of them. And he's a very good artist, for the most part.
When you got, I mean, some of these that he is sketching these paintings of were from years before, also.
40 years.
Right.
And he remembers them. He has a photo. What's the word?
Photographic memory.
Photographic memory. Yes. He can remember names, what they look like, and where he dumped them. After he was able to sketch everything, over the next year and a half, he gave investigators 650 hours worth of interviews, eventually putting the number of his victims at 93, though he said he stopped counting after 84. That December, Little pleaded guilty to the 1994 murder of Denise Christie brothers in Odessa, Texas. As part of his plea deal, he avoided the death penalty and received another life sentence. In August 2019, he pleads guilty to the murders of 4 women in Ohio: Anna Stewart, whose body was found in 1981 in a suburb of Columbus; the 84 murder of Mary Jo Payton; the 91 murder of Rose Evans in Cleveland; and an unknown woman he says he murdered more than 30 years ago, whose body has yet to be discovered.
Did he not put them on the body?
I think some of them were dumped in woods.
And after that many years, yeah.
Yep. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms for those murders as well. So he's dealing with 7, 8 consecutive life sentences. October 2019, the FBI confirmed Little to be the most prolific serial killer in United States history, and says he has been matched to 50 cases, confirmed cases, of the 93 murders he claimed he had committed.
So all of these 50, what'd you say, 50?
50 confirmed cases.
So out of the 50 confirmed cases that they have, I take it that's from DNA evidence at this point, or is this going upon his confession leading to said bodies?
His confession leading to the bodies, ways of death, where they're located, etc., etc. Names. He remembered all 50 names, what states they were in, what city in that state they were in. They also released a timeline of Little's life and crimes in hopes of identifying more of his victims. And to this day, Little's confessions are still they're still going through his confessions, and they're still being matched to existing cases. And as new victims are identified, more murder indictments are being filed across the county or country. Even though he's dead now, they're still adding that to his record.
Right.
And late 2019, he was failing in his health. He continued to work with Texas Ranger James Holland to help identify his victims and tell details of his crimes up until the day he passed away in December of 2020.
So I'm probably guessing a lot of his telling of what went on probably had stuff to do with getting deals for privileges while he's in prison, probably. You know, I'll give you this information for this.
Guarantee it. Being as old as he was in prison, I guarantee there was some kind of behind the door bargains going on.
Right.
I guess you would say, I'll give you details if you give me this or give me that or change my bunkie or whatever.
Right.
But that's all I've got for today's episode, Brent. Next episode is going to be a little bit more lengthy, and it's going to have a lot more detail in it.
Very, very nice. I'm surprised I've never heard of Sam Little.
Hey, that picture you sent me, Brent messaged me a image actually of a action figure of Samuel Little. And yes, you can buy it. You can buy it right now for $55.
We're not sponsored by them.
That is not a sponsor.
No, it's called Straight to Hell Toy Company.
The Legacy Series 16 Samuel Little going for $55. with a handwritten sample of Samuel Little and a little action figure.
There's tons of them on here also. But we're not sponsored by them. We were just telling you about it.
It's pretty cool. But that's all I got, man.
That is a really, really, really interesting story. I can't believe how many times could they drop the ball over and over and over?
He even stated in one of his confession videos, and that's something I'm going to add in the next episode. I can get some of these confession videos from the FBI, from their website, but I can put, it's like 3-minute sequels, and there's like 4 or 5 of them, and I'll superimpose those into the next episode.
Okay.
But that was, I mean, for the most part, it's pretty quick episode for the first one, but
that was fantastic. Mind blowing. I can't wait to hear some more about it whenever we come back to this. I can't wait to hear more about it. This is absolutely ridiculous story.
Kind of gets you on the edge of your seat.
I hope y'all have enjoyed this as much as I have. This is a crazy one. It really is.
It is.
So if any of y'all care to join us over on Patreon, you can get us at
patreon.com/StrangeEmbers.
You can send us an email also
at StrangeEmbersPodcast@gmail.com.
And always hit us in the comments. Anything you want to throw in there, throw us in comments. We'd love to see them on the YouTube channel.
Yes, we would. We really would. And the what Brent was talking about with the Patreon, we're actually about to start. I think we're going to start trying to get that up and going. It is a subscription-based platform, but the good thing about Patreon is it is not monetized in any form, so we can put all the nitty-gritty detail that we can't put anywhere else out on social media that does monetize it and censor it for viewers. So certain images, the gritty crime scenes, things like that, we'll be able to put on Patreon for y'all.
And it also tremendously helps us to try to get this podcast going even more and be able to give y'all better content, more in-depth cases, to be able to spend more time doing this.
Yeah. And I think Brent, we're just going to start with one tier for now, right? Or
correct.
Yeah.
There'll be just you can just join for free. I'm going to have 2 on there. One of them will be just you can join for free and, just basically be part of the community and see what's going on for anything that's free. But the membership part of it will, to begin with, it's going to be crime scene photos, things like that we can't put on the YouTube video. And for anybody on Spotify that if they want to see all this stuff, there'll be things there for that. There will also be eventually merchandise as that comes available. I think once we start getting some merchandise, we might have a tier on there to where it either, when stickers come out, you get a free sticker that comes with it. So, stuff like that. So we'll see as it keeps going. But for right now, there'll be a free tier and then just one paid tier that, more than anything, it tremendously helps us, but then it'll give you access to the crime scene photos, any kind of extra audio that we get that we can put on there, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else to touch on with the Patreon is here in the near future, maybe the extended near future, me and Brent are going to try to sit down one day and we're going to try to record a couple different episodes, knock them out. That way we have them. And what we're going to do is release them on Patreon, let's just say, I don't know, a couple days earlier than any other platform. That way, if you're really interested in it, you can hop into the Patreon, you can watch it early. We will have a discussion in there on things that we're thinking about coming up. More of a kind of like a Q&A type area as well. If I'm not mistaken, am I correct on that?
That's correct. And one of the big things when talking about the early release of episodes on all of these, just like tonight's episode, this will be a 2-part. Instead of having to wait, because we also have the 50 State Haunt series that we're doing. So instead of having to wait 2 weeks to hear it, on these that we have multiple parts, we're going to try to have these recorded pretty much back to back. And we'll edit them both at the same time, and even though part 2 will be 2 weeks before it releases on other platforms, on Patreon, we'll release them both together. So you don't have to wait. If you want to hear both episodes, you can back to back them.
Correct. And like Brent was saying, it would tremendously support us in being able to get with a merchandise company, get with, being able to do extra things so that we could get you better podcasts, better quality. That way we can retain you guys that we have and be able to reach out to more people possibly in the future as well.
Yep. We both tremendously love doing this. We tremendously love y'all being here. With that being said, we'll see you next week.